Hi everyone, welcome again to my videos on my pregnancy and what's going on with everything at the moment. By the time you see this, because we're delaying the bringing out videos and all the chopping and changing that we do and then bring them out, I'm hoping it'll all be different by the time that I do my next video. The coronavirus or COVID-19 is taking over the world and it's a bit of a shit show, to be honest. Everyone's going through it, which is probably the only solace really, is that we're all in it together and we're all trying to beat this thing any way we can. Despite what I said in my last video, where I was going to talk about more specific stuff, I think I said I was going to talk about work. I've decided to scrap that momentarily and just concentrate on this, because I think that even if you eventually see this way into the future and this isn't relevant anymore, I think it's still important to document this, because it's a really remarkable time in our lives. There's nothing that's happened like it since the Spanish flu in the early 20th century. So I'm documenting my pregnancy, and I think it's really important to document this part of my pregnancy. I never thought I would ever be in this situation as we are now in my lifetime. I always thought it would be like a superbug or something that might hit us one day, but I just never ever, in all my sort of ignorance, ever thought it would happen to me or to us in my lifetime. But here we are. I'm currently 26 weeks and 4 days pregnant, and I'm feeling it now. So 27 weeks is when you hit third trimester, and I can tell I'm in my third trimester, or I'm knocking on the door of my third trimester, because I feel huge, I feel cumbersome. So this is Bump. So I managed to squeeze myself into a dress that I actually was able to wear before I got pregnant, and thankfully I had this massive great big skirt bit here which somehow managed to accommodate Bump, which has actually been really handy. As I mentioned, I'm struggling a bit more physically now, especially with a toddler, because I'm having to do a lot of bending, still doing the odd like picking her up, moving her and helping her out and things like that. But otherwise I think it's my lack of contact with people that I'm struggling with. For example, we were due to have NCT, which is the antenatal courses that are run when you're about 2 months from your due date. We were meant to start our NCT course in 3 weeks. Obviously, because we are not able to mingle with other people, that has been cancelled. And I'm dead gutted, to be honest, because although we've had a baby, it's not really the information that they were going to give us that was the thing that I was looking forward to or wanting to learn. It was actually the meeting the people that I wanted to do, because I did it in the previous place that I lived. I used to live in Surrey, I now live in Bristol. And when I went to NCT when I was pregnant with my daughter, it was worth its weight in gold. It's not the cheapest of courses, but it was totally worth it. Just to be able to see people, meet people who are going to have babies at the same time, it makes such a difference. It makes such a huge difference to have that sort of baby community around you when you're all going through the same thing. Again, mentally is a big hit, because I'm already nervous about this baby. I'm nervous juggling a toddler with this baby, and by having like a group of people that I can communicate with and chat to and meet up with whilst on maternity leave made a huge difference to my confidence and peace of mind. And now that we've had to cancel it, it's a bit gutting, but there it is. So I was due a midwife appointment at 25 weeks. That was a telephone conversation in the end, because they didn't want me to go to the clinic, which is fair enough. And to be honest, there was nothing that they would have done in clinic that was any different than what they would have done over the phone anyway. So everything was fine. I didn't mind that at all. If anything, I was looking forward to just being able to get out of the house. So I'm going somewhere different and speaking to someone different, but it really doesn't matter. I'm just glad that they managed to just have a chat with me about the pregnancy, and everything was fine. I've got my consultant appointment in 2 weeks. So that's for 2 reasons. One, my PAPE is low, which I mentioned in one of my previous videos. PAPE is the sort of hormone that the placenta produces, which helps the growth of the baby. And if your PAPE is low, it might suggest that you have either a small baby, or you might suffer from preeclampsia or early labour. So what they'll do during that consultant appointment is have another scan. So I've got to have extra growth scans, and they will measure the baby and make sure the baby is growing healthily. The second part of that appointment is to meet the consultant themselves to discuss a birth plan, because I've previously had a planned C-section with my daughter, and as far as I'm aware, that entitles me to have a second C-section, planned C-section, if I want it this time. That consultant appointment's in 2 weeks' time, so I will let you know then how it goes. As far as work's concerned, so normally I work in a hospital or clinic base anyway. So because of that, the moment that this virus started taking hold in UK soil, I was told not to come in. Pregnant ladies are part of a at-risk category, as well as over 70s or anyone who's had previous lung problems, etc, etc. So we were put on this list, which meant that the moment this list came out as being sort of vulnerable patients, we had to come away from the hospital and clinic setting, which I was very gutted about, because I love my job. I love going into work, I love everything about it, and I am really struggling from not being part of that environment and that clinical team that I worked with. But I got it. I completely understand that it was necessary, and on reflection, you know, I'd rather be safe for me and the baby, and I'd also prefer to be out of that environment, so I don't want to spread it to my husband or my daughter. So it was the best thing, but I'm still finding it hard. So what I've been doing is working from home since the lockdown began, which was about 3 weeks ago. And what I've been doing is doing a mixture of what we call the patient risk line. So I man a telephone line, which then patients can ring either for advice or to get emergency appointments, or get extra information on COVID-19 and what we do. It's been tough, I'm not gonna lie. So the reason why it's been so tough is because I'm working from home. My husband is also working from home. I am classed as a key worker, which is fine, but my husband is not. And he can work from home. So under sort of school or nursery rules in England, whereas I think it's on a school by school or nursery or whatever basis, but if you have one parent that is not a key worker and can work from home, they are not entitled to a space in school or nursery, which I can understand. I can really understand, because you do not want to spread this any more than it has to spread, and to try and minimise the risk on the staff, the nursery staff as well. So obviously that means that we're not entitled to nursery for Emily whilst we are working, which has been the hardest part. So I'm trying to man a risk line for patients and do several work on top. My husband's part of almost like a crisis management team as far as his job's concerned, about the crisis that's happening all over the world, and how, you know, he's having to have meetings all the time on what they do on staff and And in the meantime, we're having to entertain a 3-year-old all day, every day, without having to go out, and it's been hard. We've had to enforce a daily nap, even though she dropped her nap months ago, just to try and break up the day and give us both that uninterrupted hour each day where we both can knuckle down and actually work. What will probably happen is that I will probably do this job up to my maternity leave, so I won't be going back to work properly. I won't be setting foot into another clinic or hospital now into my maternity leave. So I'm a little bit worried about how I'm going to cope with both of them if nursery doesn't reopen before baby is due, but we'll have to cross that bridge when we come to it, because if I think about it too much, I'm going to have a mental breakdown. So Emily has taken this whole thing like a flippin' champ. She is amazing. She hasn't asked any questions about it, and we haven't told her. Every time we've gone for a walk, or we've passed a park, or we've passed the library, or passed someone that she recognises, like nursery or a soft play that we go to, she will ask and whether she can go in, and the answer is no, because it's closed. And it's closed. We tend to make up things, if we're honest, you know. We'd rather not flood her brain with too much severe information, but we'll say things like they're cleaning it, or they've ran out of books, a library running out of books, or something like that. And she seems to take it pretty well, to be honest. She'll just shrug it off and go, oh, okay. I've had proper mum guilt throughout this whole thing, that I have been an awful mum to her, bless her, because I'm really struggling to find ways of entertaining her now. All the enthusiasm that we had at the very beginning has now seeped out a little bit. But saying that, I think what we've done is become more adaptable to her and her to us. So instead of trying to figure out a schedule or try and force activities on her to try and use her brain and teach her numbers and letters, etc., etc., we've just played it by ear, and we've just rolled with it. A few days ago I did ask her, do you want to go to nursery? Just as a test, you know, just to see what she said. She said, no, I want to stay with Mummy and Daddy today again. And I have to admit, that made me feel so much better, because I thought, well, we can't be damaging her too much if she still wants to stay home with us. To be honest, she's a 3-year-old. And what do 3-year-olds want to do? They want to stay home with their mum and dad and play. That's all they want to do. That's what 3-year-olds want to do. And actually, so she's like a pig in shit at the moment. She is so happy to stay at home and run around and play in the ball pool and get all her old toys out. And I think I'm overthinking it, but I think ultimately she's actually quite enjoying it. Coping mechanisms that we've used during the lockdown: walks. We've been doing a lot of walking, she's been using her scooter. We've actually been cycling, so I've got my bike out, which has been really fun with a 6-month bump, but actually it's been fine. I thought it was going to be a lot harder than it was, but actually it was really easy. Some of the people that I follow online or on Facebook or on Instagram, 5 Minute Mum is one of them. She is amazing. I love her. So I've just bought her book, and thank God for it, because it's exactly the sort of thing that I need for Emily at the moment. And even if I do, so what all these are is basically little games, or really simple little things that you set up in 5 minutes, and they can include anything from, you know, the cardboard that you've got in your bin and making it into something, but it usually all involves either learning numbers or letters or colours or shapes, or there's always a learning element to it. And even if I manage to get one little game done a day with Emily, then I feel less guilty, and I can almost say, yeah, she's learnt this today, that's fine, we'll play for the rest of the day, or watch Moana for the 15th time, or whatever it is that we can do. So we've been trying to do some exercise videos online on YouTube, which have been really helpful with Emily and, you know, toddlers and that kind of thing. The rage at the moment in England, and I think he's taken on the whole of the world now, is Joe Wicks. And we tried a few. They were pretty good, but I think they were better for the older children, because we did one with Emily, and I think she she kind of got the first one, but by the second day and the third day she wasn't interested. So we've tried to shake it up and do things like, what are the other ones we do? We do cosmic yoga. That was pretty good. And we do things like tumble tots, do one, and dancing tots are the other one. So they do video, they've put on videos on YouTube where they're doing lots of singing and dancing and all sorts. So we found those really useful. The only thing I'd say that I'm really struggling with is food ideas. So I usually only have to worry about feeding her Saturday, Sunday and Monday, because those are the days I have with her. Tuesday to Friday, both lunchtime and dinner times are taken over by the nursery, so we only ever have to give her breakfast in the morning. So I'm really struggling for ideas for food. So if anyone's got healthy, nice, toddler friendly meal ideas that aren't going to cost the world, that I could probably still somehow get in shops because the shops are bare, then please let me know, because I'm really struggling. So there you go, there's a bit about my situation at the moment with the COVID-19 crisis going on at the moment. I'm very nervous about going into labour too soon. I've read a few articles and stories about women going into labour and their partners having to stay at home, either because the partners have shown symptoms of COVID-19, or they've had no one to look after their other little ones, which is probably going to be more realistic to our situation. So that's me. I'll speak to you in a couple of weeks after I've spoken to the consultant and give you an update on my birth plan. I'll also chat to you about my experience when I had my planned C-section, because I felt like that was such a huge thing to have to go through. It is major surgery. And I found very little advice and very little information of the actual process that goes on online. So I thought I would give you an update of how I went through it and all the experiences that I did when I had my C-section. So I will see you in a couple of weeks.